Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Budahazy. I am an advanced practice nurse at North Shore Neurology, just outside of Chicago. And I am so pleased to be here with you today to discuss a topic that is so important to me. And we are today going to talk about the concept of self-care using mindfulness. Now, I am a Jean Watson Caritas coach. Jean Watson is a nurse theorist, and some of her central principles in her theory have to do with self-care, authentic presence, and treating the person as a whole being. So, our agenda today, first, we'll talk a little bit about some of the definitions and facts surrounding mindfulness, maybe debunk a few myths that are floating around out there about what mindfulness is. And then next, we'll talk a little bit about some ways to practice. There are many, many different ways to practice, and you will have the luxury of being able to select the way that works best for you to incorporate mindfulness into your life. And then we will focus on 3 ways in particular. And then after that, I will share with you some tips and tricks to go ahead and get yourself started to launch your own mindfulness practice. I do not have any disclosures or conflicts of interest to declare today. So part 1, what is mindfulness? And why does it matter? Why should it serve a purpose in our lives? The definition of mindfulness that I adopted for our time together today comes from a practitioner, Jon Kabat-Zinn, who has been known for decades on his practice of mindfulness. He is certainly an expert in the field. Any of his works that you can get your hands on, I highly encourage. And the definition that he offers forth is mindfulness is the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. I wanted to break down a few of those concepts within that definition. The concept of being aware and paying attention. As caregivers, as people living with multiple system atrophy, it's so easy to get caught up in the past, what we could have done differently, beating ourselves up, the health anxiety of symptoms that lie ahead, temperature fluctuations, for example, and facing those, the what ifs in life. And then the second concept that I want to point out is that mindfulness is something that is purposeful. So we want to purposefully pay attention and bring awareness to our thoughts and our emotions, and take the longer journey of breaking them down a little bit instead of being reactive to some of those external things that can really cause us so much stress and frustration in life. And finally, the other term that I like to bring attention to is non-judgmentally. And what that means is you may be noticing a thought or emotion that you have, and then you're quick to judge yourself. Oh, don't think that way. That's terrible. Why would I think that way? And so mindfulness is just about noticing and getting curious about your thoughts and your emotions and your experiences without being judgmental. As a second point, mindfulness has really been brought forth in a much more central manner. You may see waiting at the grocery store entire issues of Time magazine, covering the concept of mindfulness. The VA, the Veterans Administration, has certainly made mindfulness an important practice in their care for patients. And it's been used in an array of diagnoses: depression, anxiety. It's even used for chronic pain. And there's certainly plenty of research going on now to use it in the concept of cognitive rehabilitation with some memory changes with cognitive impairment. And the two citations that you'll notice there are just two of the summaries of dozens and dozens of randomized controlled trials that have been conducted on the benefits of mindfulness. The research and evidence is certainly there. I didn't want to go, that's a whole other lecture. In fact, each of these diagnoses, depression and PTSD, are really deserving of their own lecture and how mindfulness can be used. Today, though, I wanted to focus a little bit more on the activity itself and concrete ways that we can incorporate it into our lives. Finally, I wanted to draw a distinction between mindfulness and meditation. Meditation can often be a really big, scary word. Meditation is not for me. It hasn't worked for me. It's too hard. I've tried it so many times. I hear you. I've been there myself. It's called a practice for a reason. Now, mindfulness is one type of meditation. When you're feeling really comfortable in your mindfulness practice, maybe you can one day graduate into meditation. Mindfulness can really be done anywhere, as opposed to a more structured, formal program or practice that is meditation. So for the second part, I wanted to, of course, bring to the table today all of the ways that you can incorporate mindfulness into your lives as both a caregiver and as someone living with multiple system atrophy. And again, the great news is you get to choose your own adventure here. So I picked 3 mindfulness practices in particular for the purpose of this presentation today. I thought these would be 3 of the more easily adopted mindfulness practices. And then I will share plenty more with you afterwards. The first one is to simply observe. You want to focus on the present moment and engage all of your 5 senses, what you can hear, smell, see, feel, and taste. You might consider doing this during your breakfast or your morning routine. I can hear the coffee pot. I can smell my toast. I can feel the soft bathrobe against my skin and how comforting it is. I can see a bird outside of the window or my flowers in my garden. And I can taste my delicious coffee. And that took me merely a few seconds to ground myself in the present and not think about what had occurred or mull over what had occurred yesterday or what will occur tomorrow or the day after. All we really have in life are moments in the present. Now, after you've practiced listening to each of those 5 senses in the present moment, you might ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And a key word here that I always like to point out is curious. Get curious about it rather than beating yourself up or being judgmental. Identify what you're feeling and think to yourself, this is a new feeling, or it may be a long-standing feeling. Let me dig into this a little bit. I wonder why this is happening. And this may seem contradictory to what I had just said about focusing on the present. Sometimes these emotions can come up from the past or emotions towards the future. It's not, though, in fact, contradictory because you're working on identifying what you're feeling at that moment. and avoiding being reactive to it. You may want to, and this brings us to our second practice, jot that feeling down in a journal and come back to it later when you have a little bit of time. Now, journaling is the second mindful practice, a practice of mindfulness that I've selected to review in a little bit more detail today. And there are several benefits to journaling. The citation here, namely Dr. James Pennebaker, he is a social psychologist who is also very well known in the field of journaling and expressive writing and the benefits that it brings to us. Some of the benefits that it can bring are the ability to write about a conflict helps us, again, regulate our emotions about the situation. You can almost think of the pen and paper as an objective party, right? Just listening to you, not judging you back. You can think of it as getting a visual of your feelings as well, jotting your feelings down into words so you can see them. And it helps organize thoughts and file them away, quote unquote. And I love this concept of filing away. Our minds get cluttered with so much on a daily basis. And the ability to file something away could be anything that you want in and of itself. It can be writing something down and then throwing it away. It can be writing something down and hiding it for you to find weeks, months, or years later to reflect back on how much progress you had made. The final thing that I think is so important about journaling and expressive writing is it renders an emotion less potent, meaning that, again, thinking about the pen and paper almost as an objective party. You can see it, put it down on paper, make it separate from yourself, and it can be very powerful to separate a thought from your mind, write it down, and maybe walk away from it and revisit it later. It can also help you problem solve rather than reacting so quickly to maybe something hurtful someone said to you. Just giving yourself an opportunity to think on it for a little bit and return to later. And then finally, the third practice of mindfulness that I really wanted to bring to the forefront today is the concept of diaphragmatic breathing. Now, diaphragmatic breathing, what I recommend, this is also a practice. It will physically feel a little bit difficult at first, but something that you can also engage with together, patient and caregiver, as a practice to start your day or end your day, or maybe do it as you sit down for a meal 3 times per day. What you're going to want to do is sometimes sitting in front of a full-length mirror helps, or placing your hand on your abdomen. Your abdomen, as you inhale, is what should inflate like a balloon as you inhale, and then deflate as you exhale. Now, the one way that I can most easily show you not to do diaphragmatic breathing is a lot of people, it's easily misunderstood that when you take a deep breath, we do that shoulder hiking, right? So when we take a deep breath, your shoulders really should not be moving very much at all. The trapezius, the muscles in our ribs are called the intercostal muscles. They're called accessory muscles for a reason. If we are in true distress, we really will recruit those muscles if we need to. But to take a deep cleansing breath, we can practice it one more time together. And the second important concept is breathing in for 4 seconds and then out for 6. So let's try that together, and your belly inflates on the inhale and deflates on the exhale. The reason that timing is so important And why you want to have a longer exhale is there's some neuroscience behind it. The exhale cues your nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system, which we refer to as the rest and digest part of the nervous system, is cued. It's triggered when you have that longer exhale. And so there definitely is some science behind that type of breathing method. Now, the other ways to incorporate mindfulness into your day is if you are an artist, or maybe you are not an artist, and this is something that you've wanted to explore. You can go to the store and get a set of watercolors for a few bucks and a sketch pad and just have at it. You can paint anything that comes to mind. You can try to bring your emotions, practice some visualization, paint what you think your emotions look like. You can paint a scene in front of you of the outdoors. You can paint your portrait or a family member's portrait. Drawing and sketching are also other options as well. You need nothing more than a pencil or a colored pencil or a piece of chalk. And then coloring books, the phenomenon of adult coloring books, they are definitely very therapeutic, but offer a bit more structure if you feel a bit overwhelmed with just freestyling with watercolors or drawing. And indeed, it's something that you can participate in with someone else in your family. Another way that you can practice mindfulness is setting an intention. So mindfully waking up in the morning and setting, it can be considered as a goal for the day or an intention, meaning something like, I will find one new thing in nature today. I will be kind to myself today. And that could be anything at all. It could be painting your nails. It could be having a bath. It could be getting out that wonderful Afghan or blanket that you keep safe in the closet. Any way that you feel that you can be kind to yourself that day. This is also a mindfulness practice as well. And then finally, there are also ways that you can practice mindfulness in a more physical sense. We've all, of course, heard of or have dabbled in yoga, stretching. A body scan is a wonderful way to remain in the present moment. Remember, on our previous slide, we talked a little bit about spending a few seconds with what you smell, hear, see, touch in the mornings or over a meal. A body scan is a little bit more protracted, a little bit longer, where you ideally remain seated or lay on the floor if that's comfortable for you, and close your eyes and focus on each individual part of the body from head to toe. You focus on the forehead and how is it feeling? Is it feeling tense? Is it relaxed? And then you focus on your eyes. Are they squeezed really tightly shut? Or are they relaxed? Focus on your jaw, relaxing your jaw. And then you focus on your neck. Is there any tension there? All the while doing deep breathing, and so on and so forth, on down to your feet and your toes, and then back up again is technically a full body scan. How does each muscle feel? That's a little tight and tense today. How can I heal this today? Paying attention and getting curious. A walk, a shower, washing the dishes. These all may seem like mundane things. In fact, a central principle of Taoism is engaging in the mundane and finding the beauty in that, walking the same path that you've taken every single day. The cleansing nature of a shower. These are things, washing the dishes. These are things we go through sort of on a daily basis and treat them as tasks. But Taoism asks us to think more about them as mindfulness practices, feeling the water on your hands, smelling the soap, watching the steam flutter throughout the air, and focusing on the present. Doing your favorite thing. How often have we forgotten the things that we love? Films, books, our favorite perfumes, giving our friend a call, to make an actual phone call. And I think, again, we go through our days so very focused on the tasks. What's the next task? What do we have to do next? And just really going back to basics of incorporating the things that you love into your life, whether it's something daily or weekly or monthly, social, or something that you do on your own. It can really hit a reset and recharge button for you. And then finally, again, in fitting with these things that we do on a daily basis, those mundane tasks we don't give much thought to, mindful eating, considering eating as an opportunity to nourish yourself. Acknowledge this moment that you are taking to nourish yourself with this delicious food, pausing in between bites, rather than scarfing our meal down and move on to the next part of our day. Stopping when you're about 75% full. It takes a little bit of time for us to feel full. And indeed, living with MSA, sometimes often taking in smaller meals and smaller bites, lends us to eating in this mindful way to begin with, but just taking the time to think about it and express gratitude for this present moment of your meal. Now, with having listed all of those different ways to incorporate mindfulness into your life, the final part that I wanted to focus on is, how do I get started? This may all seem very overwhelming, but I love this quote from Walt Disney, which is, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. And indeed, an author of a 1,000-page book has to start on page 1. So we have to start somewhere. The first tip that I like to share is, set yourself up for success. Don't suddenly decide, without having never practiced mindfulness or meditation, I'm going to start with 30 minutes on a daily basis. And then if you only make it through 2 or 3 minutes, let's flip that from a failure to a success. I'm going to aim for 30 seconds. And for example, the mindfulness practice of observing your 5 senses first thing in the morning takes mere seconds. It's a very easy way to get started. I would also recommend picking one time of day that is most convenient. We all have very busy days. I know sometimes living with MSA, the morning can feel the most symptomatic. And it may be that the evening is the time that you set your intention for the following day. Or maybe your evening meal is the time that you engage your 5 senses. Any time of day at all works. I also love the concept of engaging a partner for accountability. You, of course, do not have to. You can make this practice of mindfulness entirely your own. But maybe you've had a friend or family member, or as caregiver-patient relationship, you think a little bit about, you've talked about it maybe, and you just needed that little push to move forward with how to incorporate mindfulness into your lives. So I think a partner is always helpful for accountability purposes. The third point that I wanted to share for tips and tricks to get started is, start with an activity that appeals the most to you. This should not feel forced. Oh gosh, it's time to do my watercolor today. Alternatively, you may pick something that you've never engaged in before. Maybe you were never an artist and you think, I'm going to do something different and get a set of watercolors tomorrow. But it should never feel forced. Ideally, we carve out a little bit of time in our day, every day, for mindfulness, but some days we just don't have it. And you may just never want to force it. Eventually, if you incorporate mindfulness into your day routinely, you'll start to crave it and grow the amount of time from seconds to minutes or longer and how much you engage in mindfulness. Hindsight is 2020. I love that saying. It's sometimes helpful, especially if you're journaling, maybe to reflect back on the progress. Maybe your first journal entry was just a bunch of words. Maybe it was a bunch of frustrations and fears. And now moving forward, you start catching yourself where you think, wow, that type of situation I could have been so easily frustrated or fearful of in the past, and I'm no longer feeling that way. So congratulations, that's wonderful. And then finally, some people like to create a several week structure, and that's okay too. Maybe you have that type of personality where you create a several week time frame. John Kabat-Zinn, one of his frameworks is he came up with an 8-week mindfulness program. But you don't have to do anything like that. You can take it day by day. Again, we're living in the present and all we have are moments. But you're also welcome to set up a calendar for the next month. I'm going to try painting for 1 week and see how that goes. I'm going to try being mindful on my walk, showers, and doing the dishes for a week, and then move on to the next one and look back and see what you loved the most and what recharged you the most. Now, I left you with a list of additional reading and resources. Some of the authors I've mentioned to you already along the way in some of the research that I shared with you. John Kabat-Zinn, extremely well-known expert, a social psychologist, as well as Pema Chodron. She is an American nun and Buddhist. Thich Nhat Hanh, also a wonderful writer regarding mindfulness and meditations, poems. James Pennebaker is also he is the social psychologist, who focuses on the importance of expressive writing, well-known expert in that field. I encourage writings from any of these authors on these topics. And finally, there are a few other apps and websites. If any of you have Netflix or the ability to download apps, Headspace is an app. It's now also a program on Netflix that comes in small, roughly 20-minute episodes that walks you through mindfulness and meditation. So it offers a little bit more structure. Again, if you're feeling so completely overwhelmed with doing this on your own, Andy Puddicombe actually himself became a Buddhist monk and offers a lot of wonderful guidance on incorporating these practices into your life. Finally, a reputable website and publication that I find easy to read. I really love Psychology Today. Great articles on so many concepts: gratitude, appreciation, mindfulness, meditation, that I always encourage people to explore. Written by social workers, providers, very reputable. And then finally, in my training as a Gene Watson Caritas coach, I had the privilege of meeting Mary Rockwood Lane. She's a nurse and artist, has a wonderful website, very easy to find on Google, and who also has many publications on using art therapy to incorporate into your life. Here are my references for my presentation. And I wanted to thank you for allowing me this space to share some of these practices in mindfulness. Thank you for your time.